Welcome back to our SOAP videos in the Christmas story. As we lead up to Christmas, we're taking 5 weeks, well, I guess a little past Christmas too, so through the rest of the year.
Christmas season.
Christmas season, there we go. We're taking 5 weeks to work our way through more than just a traditional Christmas readings. Frankly, I couldn't come up with 5 weeks worth of reading
So you went out
for Christmas. So I just kept going out in circles until I thought, okay, there's enough for 5 weeks.
Nice.
And we get some scriptural context and some other stuff.
But it's kind of cool, right? Because we're chronologically going through the Christmas story, and adding in a little bit more. So it is a little weird as we're talking about things here. They may or may not have read them.
And
it definitely shows up this week.
Match up with the reading, right? Because this week we're going to be talking about Anna and Simeon. Or Simeon and Anna, depending on if you're talking chronological order.
Right, and they read it last week.
Last week, because the reading was from week 3, but we're in week 4 out of 5.
Yeah, so we're not off. You're not crazy.
We're crazy, but So the account is actually fairly short. Of these two people, right? In Luke chapter 2, why don't you give us the rundown of what's going on here with these? Who are these people?
Yeah, well,
and why are they part of the Christmas story?
So I think even before that, or even to do that, we got to talk about Mary and Joseph, because they are going through undoubtedly the strangest year in their life, right? It's kind of the way we put it. I mean, think everything that they've been through.
This was their 2020? Is that what you're saying?
That's a really good way of putting it. Except they had some cool things happen, right?
Yeah.
They're visited by an angel. I mean, separately, but how strange is that? Mary shows up pregnant. From Joseph's standpoint, his fiance is now pregnant. How does that work out? They traveled 3.5 days for a census. They moved. Shepherds gave them this really strange account on what happened to them. A heavenly host came. Think about how odd everything is, and we do see little snippets in there where Mary is actually pondering things. So it's she is at least taking it in.
I wonder how the 5 or 6 months went from the time she came back to Nazareth until they went to Bethlehem. What are those?
How bad was it?
Yeah. I mean, half or more of her pregnancy. Right. What was that like in a small town? Yeah,
exactly. Really small town. Probably everybody's close to being interrelated.
Yeah.
A couple families. Had to be hard.
That was a rough year.
Right. So we're now 40 days after Jesus' birth. And it says that there's 2 things that happen.
I told you we had to go outside the Christmas story. 40 days.
It's not that much. But Mary and Joseph, they go back to the temple in Jerusalem, which means that they're still down there in that area, and they have to do 2 things. There's a ritual purification from Mary's standpoint, and then Jesus as the firstborn. There's a dedication to God for that. Then, while they're there, they meet 2 people. Now, it's 2 separate interactions. The first one is Simeon, and Simeon's described as righteous and devout, and he's looking for the restoration of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him, and it was a really cool thing. His superpower is he's not going to die before he sees the Lord's Christ.
I love that phrase, by the way. The Lord's Christ. Not Israel's Messiah, not, whatever, but the Lord's, Jehovah's Messiah, literally, is where I love that.
Simeon sees Jesus. There's an interaction there. I mean, Jesus is 40 days old, so he's talking to Mary and Joseph.
Not much of an interaction.
He's talking to Mary and Joseph. But he tells Mary a number of things. Jesus will be a sign that will be rejected, and then the results of him, Jesus. The thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, which is is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Yeah. Is it a thing? And then a sword will pierce your own soul as well.
Talking to Mary.
Talking to Mary there. Yeah. And we'll get into this in a little more detail, but this is all things that we read last week, and really I'm kind of hitting the surface part of it. And then we talked to Anna, and we found out that Anna is a prophetess. That's a tough one to say. And she's very old. Doing the math, she comes out to 105. Some people think she's just 85, but she was born, and at some point she got married. She was married for 7 years, and now it seems like she's been a widow for 85 years. So if you add all that together, some people don't, but she's old.
Some people put her cap or her age rather at 84 years, and then just sort of fold the rest of it into it. But either way,
either way,
85 to 105.
Yep. And it's interesting that she's never left the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, and she is spending her days worshiping with fasting and prayer, day and night.
So she would have been, as a widow, she would have fallen under the Jewish, let's say, the welfare system, where the temple, because she was in Jerusalem, had she been somewhere else, the synagogue probably would have done it. But she was taken care of, so this is why she was there. The closest, and don't get me wrong, this is not identical at all, but the closest modern comparison would be like a nun.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think most people go to.
Yeah,
but again, like you said,
not at all the same thing. But she was there to serve at the temple. She dedicated her life once she was widowed to serving God in the temple.
Yeah. And she talked to Mary and Joseph also, and there was a shorter interaction, and she gave thanks to God, and then also let them know that all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. So a little different than Simeon's, but yet they're really close in what was happening there. Yeah. And at a surface, it's kind of a cool story, right? You go to dedicate your child. Two people come up and let you know that, hey, thanks for bringing the Messiah into this world, type of thing.
Well, how many people is this now that have popped in? Yeah, the shepherds have popped in. These two, the wise men are going to. They haven't yet. Yeah, but over the course of the first couple of years, people just keep popping in.
Right. Well, but I think that's it. If you have one interaction, okay, that person, may not have been with it. Right. But with so many different people who have not interacted with each other, there's something bigger going on here.
So why do you think, pop question, right? Yeah. We haven't talked about this one. Why
not that I'm worried.
Yeah, right, yeah. What do you think was the primary reason for God sending... I mean, he obviously sent the shepherds. He obviously talked to Simeon and said, you're not going to die until you see the Messiah. Right. We don't know anything about Anna as far as what God had told her. He obviously sent the wise men. Why do you think he keeps sending people to see Jesus? I have my own opinion, but I'm just wondering...
I see it as two ways. One is he needs to provide Mary and Joseph with enough so they understand what they have. How Jesus should be raised, preparing them for what is going to happen. And then the second thing is there's a number of people on quote the outside who are righteous and devout who get a little insight into what's happening, to share in part of the story. And I kind of see that with us when we're supposed to be doing evangelism. God doesn't need us to do that. We can be part of the story though. And almost like a reward. Yeah. Earthly reward, I see it as. Yeah. Especially in the case of Simeon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I agree with both of those. Absolutely. 100%. The other thing that I would say, would be from our standpoint then too. If we go out one more level, what do we see? We see shepherds, lower class. We see wise men, upper class. We see old people. We see young people. We see that Jesus came... Right. And his life, literally from the very beginning, his life impacted everybody of every social status, Jews, Gentiles, everything. Right. And so from the very beginning, he was doing that, and he's never stopped.
Right. Now, it's kind of cool, and I just said, I aced a test, but might have kind of failed this one, too, a little bit, because there is something deeper going on here, too, that we do need to explore. Certainly from the reading, this is what you get out of it, but there's a whole, like you said, there's a whole nother level, a whole nother impact. Level. So yeah, why don't you walk us through that, or at least part of it? Yeah, because you don't get to spend all of it.
What? So as I'm reading through Simeon, especially, as I'm reading through Simeon, all of a sudden, I'm seeing connections to the Old Testament. Of course, the New Testament wasn't written yet by the time Simeon, but I see some connections there too. But I see some connections to the Old Testament that I think are just phenomenal. We don't know anything about Simeon, but this guy knows his Bible. I know that. This guy knows his Bible. So if we go to Luke 2, his first speech there, 29 to 32. Now, according to your word, sovereign Lord, which is a great, one of the great names of God in the Old Testament. Abraham calls him that. Just really cool. Permit your servant to depart in peace. Now, for my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, there's your Gentiles again, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people, Israel. So that immediately takes me back to Isaiah 9, verses 1 and 2, where we read, in earlier times he humiliated the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, but now he brings honor, so there's the glory, because those are similar words, to the way of the sea, the region beyond Jordan, and Galilee of the, now the net says Galilee of the nations. Most of our other translations will say Galilee of the Gentiles. So there's a Gentile connection there, right? The people walking in darkness have seen a bright light, or great light. The light shines on those who live in a land of deep darkness. So we have Simeon here in his little prophecy talking about a light to the Gentiles, which comes right out of Isaiah 9, 1 and 2. And the reason that that's cool is because if we jump just 4 verses down in Isaiah 9, verse 6, for unto us a child is born, for unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and his name will be called, and there's 4 titles given to Jesus. Wonderful Counselor, right? Mighty God, Everlasting Father. It's usually translated Everlasting Father, but he's not the Father of the Trinity, right? So some people have a problem with that. Probably Father of Eternity is better. Just giving his is better. And Prince of Peace, his dominion will be vast, will bring immeasurable prosperity. He'll rule on David's throne, and the kingdom shall have no end. Yeah. So we see Simeon here in his prophecy drawing directly
from the Christmas story.
From the Christmas story.
For unto us.
And then, you know, the child's father and mother were amazed at what he said about him. Go figure, right? And then he talks specifically to Mary. This child is destined to be the cause of the falling and the rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be rejected. Well, that takes me to Psalm 118, which Jesus quoted about himself, and which Peter quotes in 1 Peter 2. Of course, Simeon didn't know anything. Peter may not have even been born yet. Yeah. Well, Jesus, we don't know how old he was. But in Psalm 118, the stone that the builders have rejected has become the cornerstone. And Jesus said, I will be a stone that will be tripped over. Paul used this in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. You either, and 2, trip over him and step up. You're going to do one or the two things. You're either going to trip on him or you're going to stand with him as your foundation. So he's going to be the cause for the falling and the rising, and a sign that will be rejected. A sign rejected. What did we just read not too long ago in Isaiah 53? He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and as we were, as it were, hid our face from him.
Right. So it's amazing, really, right? In all 3 verses in
I know
the New Testament.
And we can keep going. And that's the thing, is that this is just, you talked about the redemption of Israel or the restoration of Jerusalem and all this stuff. This is exactly what they've been waiting for the Messiah to come do. And he is, as I already mentioned, the Lord's Messiah. Psalm 2, I have appointed you, I have made you this day, I've begotten you, I'm going to set you on my holy Mount of Zion. I mean, we could go through the entire Old Testament pulling this stuff out. And I just love the fact that Simeon makes, whether they were intentional or not, I think that they were intentional.
Well,
I think this guy knew his Old
right.
Testament, his Bible. And,
right. And he was quoting the Old Testament to her.
Yeah. Yep.
Letting her know. And then Anna was the same way. And it just, a lot of times we think it was just those two. But Anna makes a statement in there, and she was going to tell all who were
waiting for the redemption.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's here.
Yep. I mean, they were so excited. Everybody who, I talked about all these people popping in. The shepherds were excited.
Yeah.
Simeon was excited.
You're a piece of the story.
Yeah.
How cool is it? Something that your family has been waiting on for generations.
Yep. There was nobody in the know who was not excited about this, except Herod. Okay?
Yeah.
And you could even, because he was told that it was the king of the Jews, right? Everybody else who was not excited about it, maybe family and some other people, they weren't excited about it, but they weren't really in the know. They didn't get this. Zechariah, Elizabeth, John the Baptist, the unborn John who leapt for joy when Mary showed up. And she was, Jesus had just barely been conceived, maybe a few days conceived by that point, and John the Baptist in the womb leapt for joy. Everybody in the know was excited about this. Right. And as we go into the Christmas season, or as we are in the Christmas season, as we come up to Christmas here soon, this is an exciting thing.
Right.
We've got to be excited. Everybody's excited about this, and we just go about our lives because we've heard this Christmas story for 2,000 years, and it's the same story every year.
Right. Yeah, so get excited about it this year. We need something to be excited about in this year, but a story that hasn't changed in 2,000 years. Hopefully you saw something a little different than you have before. Maybe you'll go back and check out some of these Isaiah references too, and just keep turning the pages back and forth. Oh, I see this, I see that, I see this.
Yep. And if nothing else, a lot of people need a lot of good news at the end of 2020.
Yeah.
And this is the best news
this
there
is. This is the good news.
This is the good news. This is the best there is.
Yeah, great. Great place to end.
That's a great place, yeah. Well, we've got one more week coming up. Next week we'll talk about the angels, right? So they show up a couple of times.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So join us next week. Make sure that you like or subscribe or follow all the different ways that you can do that. Share this with your friends and family. Maybe even if you don't do the rest of the S.O.A.P videos during this Christmas season, they might like to have a little bit of good news this year as well. And we'll see you back here next week as we finish up our Christmas S.O.A.P videos.
Bye.